Bullies mock a black girl. Then she makes one call and everything changes. The hallway at Malcolm X High School was a war zone of whispers and sideways glances. 15-year-old Trinity Johnson slipped through the crush of backpacks and teenage bravado, wishing to vanish into the beige walls. But the sharp laughter of her tormentors stabbed into her every time she tried to blend in. By the time she reached her locker, that same mocking chorus had planted doubts in her head. Why me? Yet somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark refused to die. Today would be different. Today, Trinity would fight back. With one phone call, she'd set forces in motion that no one, least of all her bullies, could ever have anticipated. The sun rose behind the row houses of West Philadelphia, casting an orange glow that filtered through the thin curtains of Trinity's small bedroom. She lay awake on her neatly made bed, heart thrumming with a mix of fear and anticipation. A new school day loomed, promising a repeat of the torment that had become her norm. Yet as she stared at the vision board pinned to her wall, pictures of Michelle Obama, Serena Williams, and filmmakers she admired, she reminded herself that she wasn't powerless. She just needed a plan. Downstairs, the air was filled with the comforting aroma of coffee and buttered toast. Trinity's mother, Patrice, was busy stacking medical textbooks beside her nursing assistant uniform. After working a long night shift at the neighborhood clinic, Patrice still insisted on making breakfast. Trinity found her mother's tireless love both a solace and a burden. She hated adding any more stress to Patrice's life. "Morning, baby girl," Patrice said, smiling over her shoulder. She dropped a piece of toast onto a plate. "You were up early. Everything all right?" Trinity forced a reassuring nod. "I'm okay. Just couldn't sleep well." Patrice studied her for a moment, noticing the shadow of worry in Trinity's eyes. "Want to talk about it?" Trinity hesitated. She could describe every smirk, every jeer from the bullies who made her days miserable, especially a girl named Brianna Reynolds. But she'd tried confiding in the school administration before, and nothing changed. Instead, it felt like complaining just piled more worries onto her mom's already heavy shoulders. "It's nothing serious, Mom. I'm dealing with it." Patrice nodded slowly. "All right. But remember, if it gets too heavy, you tell me. We'll figure it out together." Breakfast was a routine mix of quiet chewing and small talk about the weather. Trinity's mind spun, replaying yesterday's humiliations. Brianna's snide remark about Trinity's hair, the accidental spill of milk onto Trinity's shoes, the hushed comments about her acceptance into a summer film workshop at the University of Pennsylvania. By 7:30 a.m., Patrice was driving Trinity to Malcolm X High. The rain-slicked streets passed in a blur of corner stores, murals of civil rights icons, and small crowds waiting at bus stops. This neighborhood was vibrant, but it could also be tough, just like the school that bore Malcolm X's name. When they pulled up to the entrance, Patrice offered a tight squeeze of Trinity's hand. "I love you. Remember who you are." Trinity slipped out of the car, steeling herself. She walked through the school gates, merging into a sea of students in every style imaginable: baggy jeans, brand-name hoodies, and the occasional sharp outfit. She tried to fade into the background, but she felt the all-too-familiar weight of eyes on her. At her locker, she found a message scrawled in black ink. "Think better than us, get lost." She swallowed. The letters sprawled across the metal reminded her that despite the diversity the school claimed to celebrate, she'd been singled out for everything that made her unique: her intelligence, her interest in filmmaking, and most pointedly, her black identity. It didn't matter that Brianna was black too. Brianna's group targeted anyone who threatened their social dominance. The first class was English, with Mr. Allen, a soft-spoken teacher who encouraged open debate. Trinity took her seat by the window, hoping to disappear. Instead, Brianna chose the seat directly behind her, flanked by her loyal sidekicks, Marisol and Daisy. They made a show of whispering and snickering just loud enough for Trinity to hear every insulting word. "So-called film star," Brianna hissed. She only got into that program for diversity points. Trinity's cheeks burned, but she kept her gaze glued to her notebook. She planned to stay silent, at least for now. Because with each whispered barb, she was growing more certain she needed to do something drastic. Reporting it to the principal had failed. Pleading with teachers accomplished nothing. If she wanted change, she'd have to be bold enough to spark it herself. When the class ended, Trinity shoved her books into her backpack and hurried into the hallway. She felt a ghost of a plan forming in her mind. Gather evidence, find allies, and if the school still refused to act, go outside their chain of command. She wasn't entirely sure how, but she suspected her mother's sister, Aunt Gwen, an activist with the local NAACP, might have some ideas. A single thought propelled her through the rest of the day. I won't be their punching bag anymore. I'll find a way to make them see me, and if they don't listen, I'll force them to. By midweek, the harassment escalated in subtle but cutting ways. In the cafeteria, Brianna's clique would commandeer the table near Trinity's usual spot, forcing her to either stand or find somewhere else to sit. They muttered pointed comments about her uppity attitude, as though going to a film program were a crime. In gym class, someone accidentally hurled a basketball that grazed her head, and though Brianna feigned concern, the smug grin that followed told Trinity the act was deliberate. She tried confronting one teacher, Miss Davis, whose eyes clouded with sympathy, but offered the same tired response. "We'll talk to them, but these are teenage issues. Let's try mediation." Nothing ever came of it. The bullies had perfected the art of covering their tracks just enough to avoid serious trouble. Trinity's frustration hit its peak one rainy afternoon, when she stayed late to use the school's editing lab. She was passionate about film recording stories of her neighborhood's unsung heroes, editing small documentary snippets, and dreaming of eventually seeing her own movies on the big screen. She felt safe in that lab, a place where her creativity thrived. But even that sanctuary wasn't spared from Brianna's shadow. She packed her equipment around 4 p.m. The corridors eerily quiet. Just as she turned a corner, she nearly stumbled over Marisol and Daisy, who were waiting with their phones out, as if eager to capture her reaction on camera. Brianna emerged from behind a row of lockers. Arms crossed a triumphant smirk on her face. "Well, look who's all alone," she said, her tone dripping with contempt. "Where's your fan club?" "Miss Documentary." Trinity's throat went dry, but she refused to let her voice tremble. "I'm not alone," she answered, keeping her head high. "And I'm not scared of you." Brianna's smirk deepened. "You should be," she said. Her voice echoed off the locker doors, the threat lingering in the stale air. "Or do I need to teach you another lesson?" Daisy and Marisol sniggered. One of them recorded the exchange, presumably hoping to catch Trinity's meltdown on camera. Every nerve in Trinity's body told her to shout, scream, or run. But she thought of her mother, her aunt, and her own dignity. Instead, she simply turned and walked away. She could still hear their laughter behind her, each note a cruel reminder that they relished her humiliation. Outside, the sky was weeping, reflecting the storm roiling in Trinity's chest. She rushed home, water sloshing in her sneakers, anger rising with every step. She was done being a target. That evening, as she sat at her bedroom desk, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number appeared on her screen. "Stay in your lane, or you'll regret it." Trinity read it twice, fury and fear mixing in her chest. She took a screenshot, filed it under a folder labeled Evidence, and then stared at her phone's home screen, where Aunt Gwen's number was saved. After weeks of festering resentment and exhausted hope in the school's system, she dialed. Aunt Gwen answered on the second ring, her voice warm and strong. "Hey, baby girl. You all right?" Hearing that familiar tone almost made Trinity burst into tears. "Aunt Gwen, I'm not okay." She explained everything: the locker graffiti, the whispers, the brazen confrontation that afternoon, and the chilling text she'd just received. Gwen listened without interrupting, then said calmly, "I've seen cases like this. Too many. The local NAACP chapter can help. But you'll need proof, a record of attempts to get help from the school, and the will to stand firm when things escalate." Trinity's mind whirled. "You think they'll listen?" "They might not at first," Gwen replied, "especially if the bullies have connections. But we'll make them listen. This is your civil right. We won't let them take that from you." A wave of relief washed over Trinity. What do I do next? Document everything. Don't engage in fights. Let them paint themselves into a corner. Then we bring it all into the light. They spoke for nearly an hour, strategizing about how to approach the school, how to protect Trinity's safety, and what steps the NAACP might take if the administration didn't respond. By the time Trinity hung up, the ball of tension in her stomach had loosened, replaced by a cautious sense of power. She might still be terrified, but now she had a guide and a glimpse of hope. Clutching her phone, she gazed at the images of her role models on the vision board. They faced struggles too, she reminded herself. No real progress comes without a fight. That night, as rain drummed against her window, she resolved to fight back in a way the bullies would never see coming. Morning came with an overcast sky, a perfect mirror to Trinity's subdued mood. She tried to muster her usual calm facade, but each step into Malcolm X High felt heavier than the last. Her new resolution to gather evidence clashed with the raw anxiety of having to face Brianna's group, who seemed more emboldened by the day. In history class, Trinity strategically chose a seat up front, close to the teacher's desk. She discreetly pressed the record button on her phone, which was tucked into her pencil case, capturing any hateful remarks. Her heart beat double time, but she forced herself to remain poised. For the first 20 minutes, Brianna sat silently in the back row, flipping through a notebook, offering only pointed glares. Just as Trinity started to believe the day might pass peacefully, she heard a faint snicker. "Well, Miss Star student's at it again," Brianna murmured loud enough for Trinity to pick up. "Maybe we should all just step aside so she can hog every opportunity. Isn't that what she wants?" Heat flared in Trinity's cheeks, but she kept her gaze on the teacher's slideshow. She reminded herself not to react openly. She needed them to keep talking, to reveal their own malice. A rush of adrenaline coursed through her veins. For the first time, she felt she had the upper hand. She was documenting their behavior, collecting evidence that would prove she wasn't just imagining things. Brianna huffed when Trinity ignored her, and soon Marisol chimed in, something about Trinity's next sob story. The teacher missed Sir. Hilton continued with his lecture on the civil rights era, oblivious to the tension swirling at the back of the room. Ironically, the slides displayed images of protesters holding signs that read, End racism now. The irony wasn't lost on Trinity. The school taught history yet tolerated a modern echo of discrimination in its own corridors. As soon as the bell rang, Trinity clicked off her recording. She didn't say a word to Brianna or her crew. She simply slipped out of class before they had a chance to surround her. Her plan was to keep a low profile, gather more evidence, and then consult Aunt Gwen. She had no idea that an even bigger threat was forming, one that would force her hand sooner than she expected. After lunch, she reached her locker and found it slightly ajar. Her heart pounded. Had she forgotten to lock it? She twisted the combination dial, opened the door, and froze in dismay. The inside was a mess. Torn pages from her film program. Notes scattered the floor, and the precious photos from her vision board. Michelle Obama, Ava DuVernay, were vandalized with hateful scribbles, slurs about her background, snide remarks about affirmative action. Fury stung her eyes. As she scrambled to gather the damaged items, she noticed Brianna's friend, Daisy, leaning against a nearby locker phone in hand. Daisy smirked, fiddling with her nails, as though she'd simply stopped to watch the spectacle. Trinity took a deep breath, forcing herself not to explode in front of Daisy. Instead, she snapped photos of the vandalism, every racist comment spelled out in black marker. Daisy let out a cold laugh, then walked away without a word. Trinity's fingers trembled so badly she could barely hold her phone steady. She felt tears pooling, but blinked them back. The stinging anger made her want to confront Daisy right then and there, but she remembered Aunt Gwen's advice: gather proof, show them for who they are. She uploaded the photos to a secure folder on her cloud drive, along with the day's audio recordings. A couple of friends from her old neighborhood, Tasha and Romello, approached, their faces tight with concern when they saw the disarray. "T, we heard what happened," Tasha said, softly. "You gonna tell Principal Martinez?" Trinity shook her head. "He won't do anything. I've tried. But I have another plan." They helped her collect the torn papers, offering quiet support. Although Trinity felt violated, the small act of kindness reminded her she wasn't entirely alone. There were good people at the school, overshadowed by a few loud bullies, and an administration too slow to intervene. She spent the rest of the afternoon in a tense haze, replaying the vandalism in her mind, the hateful words scrawled across the photos. Once again, the irony was glaring. The school prided itself on being named after Malcolm X, a leader who championed self-respect and resistance against racism. Yet within those walls, a modern form of the same hatred he'd fought was raging unchecked. When the final bell rang, she clutched her phone and marched out of the building. The quiet game was getting harder to maintain, but she'd managed to protect her evidence. In her heart, a new resolve burned bright. She wanted justice not just for herself, but for anyone else suffering from prejudice in silence. That evening, Trinity sat on the living room couch, surrounded by the remnants of her vandalized notes. Patrice paced the room, fuming about the injustice. She insisted they visit Principal Martinez first thing in the morning. Yet Trinity remained hesitant. Every time she'd reported harassment before, the principal had offered polite words, but little action. The bullies returned emboldened, as if wearing an invisible shield of impunity. As Patrice began listing all the times the school had failed to step in, the front door opened and Aunt Gwen entered. She was a tall, striking woman with a purposeful stride and a voice that commanded attention. She worked with the local NAACP chapter, focusing on community outreach and social justice training. The moment she saw the scattered papers, her eyes hardened with empathy. "Show me what they did," she said, no preamble. Trinity handed over her phone, scrolling through the photographs of the racist scribbles. Gwen's jaw tightened. This is harassment, plain and simple. Plus, it's racially charged. The school can't sweep that under the rug. We'll make sure of it." Patrice exhaled relief, mingling with fear. "So what's the next step?" Gwen set the phone on the coffee table. "I'll accompany you to see Principal Martinez. We'll present the evidence. If he doesn't act, we file a formal complaint with the school district's Office of Equity. And if that still gets ignored, we escalate to the media. Trust me, they don't want headlines about a racist bullying scandal at Malcolm X High." Trinity's stomach twisted at the mention of going public. She imagined rumors flying, classmates turning against her, maybe even local reporters hounding her. She chewed her lip. "I'm scared it might just make things worse." Gwen placed a reassuring hand on Trinity's shoulder. "I know it's scary, but bullies thrive on silence. They rely on people's fear of speaking up. We end that. If the administration handles it properly, we may never need to involve the press." Patrice nodded in agreement. "We'll give the school one last chance to do the right thing." The next morning, the three of them arrived at the principal's office. The secretary asked them to wait, her eyes darting nervously from Gwen's confident posture to Patrice's grim expression. After a few minutes, Principal Martinez emerged, a wide smile plastered on his face. "Good morning, Ms. Johnson." "Trinity." "Ms. Gwendolyn Avery with the Endover ACP." Gwen supplied. "We need to speak with you about a serious matter." Martinez's eyes flickered with caution. He led them into his office, a sparsely decorated room, dominated by a large wooden desk. Patrice recounted the history of bullying, the repeated attempts to get help, and the recent locker vandalism. Gwen supplemented with digital evidence, screenshots, photos, even a short audio clip capturing Brianna's threats. Principal Martinez listened, adjusting his tie nervously. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for bullying," he said, "especially when it involves race. This is certainly troubling, but we need time to investigate." Gwen leaned forward, her voice measured. "We understand investigations take time, but we need immediate steps like separating Trinity from her known harassers, ensuring she can attend classes safely, and suspending the bullies if evidence confirms their guilt." Martinez cleared his throat, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. "We'll conduct interviews. If the accusations hold up, we'll follow policy. But we can't just suspend students without due process." Patrice's voice trembled with anger. "Is the due process for them more important than my daughter's right to a safe environment?" Martinez sighed. "I'm only saying we must proceed carefully. Also, Brianna Reynolds's father is on the school board. We have to be fair and thorough." Gwen caught that subtle hint of caution. "Yes, fairness is key. But so is accountability, no matter whose parent is on the board." The meeting ended with a promise of an internal inquiry. Outside in the hallway, Gwen turned to Patrice and Trinity. "He's not going to leap into action. The board connection means he'll tread lightly, maybe even stall, but we've put him on notice. If they brush us off, we have our next steps ready." As they exited the building, Trinity wondered if she had the fortitude for a drawn-out fight. A swirl of dread and determination clashed in her stomach. Still, she clung to Gwen's words. Bullies thrive on silence. She wasn't silent anymore. If the school stonewalled her, she'd dig deeper. She'd make the phone call she'd been dreading, and hoping for the one that would unleash a force far bigger than Malcolm X High could handle. The following day, Trinity walked into school armed with cautious optimism. Principal Martinez had been formally notified. Aunt Gwen was ready to escalate if necessary. Maybe Trinity thought the bullies will realize the jig is up. For the first half of the morning, things seemed calmer. Brianna didn't appear in the hallway, and Daisy and Marisol kept their distance, casting icy glares from across the cafeteria, rather than provoking a direct confrontation. Trinity managed to breathe a little easier, hoping the pressure from the principal's office had forced them to back off. But halfway through lunch, Trinity's phone lit up with a barrage of messages. Curious glances from nearby tables suggested something was spreading quickly online. When Tasha slid onto the seat beside Trinity, her eyes were wide with alarm. "You need to see this." The video Tasha played made Trinity's stomach twist. It was a heavily edited clip splicing together fragments of Trinity's old film projects and random statements out of context. In one part, Trinity criticized the lack of funding in public schools. It cut to another clip, making it look like she was insulting the school itself. The final seconds flashed a text overlay. "Who's the real bully here?" Trinity's jaw fell open. They manipulated my footage. She recognized a handful of second-long clips from a student presentation she'd done about educational inequities. Now it seemed twisted into an "I hate Malcolm X High" diatribe. Comments under the video were piling up, with some viewers condemning Trinity as stuck-up, ungrateful, or even traitorous to her own community. Tasha set her phone down, an anxious frown creasing her forehead. "We know it's fake, but a lot of people won't bother to check. They'll just believe it." Trinity's chest tightened. This was Brianna's handiwork retaliation for daring to complain. Already she could see lines forming. Some classmates glared at her from across the room, while others looked uncertain, as though trying to decide who to believe. Wordlessly, Trinity rose from the table. She rushed to find Mr. Thompson, the guidance counselor. He was a kind man in his early 40s, known for his supportive presence. But even he looked overwhelmed when Trinity showed him the video. "This is outrageous," he said, running a hand over his short beard. "I'll bring it up to Principal Martinez immediately." "Please do," Trinity said, voice quavering. "People are already messaging me about it. They're calling me fake that I don't respect my own school or neighborhood." Mr. Thompson nodded sympathetically. "Stay calm. I'll make sure Martinez sees this. You might want to document any further harassment, too." She left his office, feeling no better. Stay calm, she thought bitterly. She knew the damage was done. People believed gossip more readily than truth, especially when the rumor fit a certain narrative. Her phone buzzed non-stop with texts from acquaintances. "Is this real? Why would you say those things, girl? You messed up." Each message chipped at her composure. Between afternoon classes, she spotted Brianna by the lockers, ignoring the furious stares that Trinity leveled her way. A smug smile curved Brianna's lips. "Now we're even," she mouthed silently, as if daring Trinity to confront her. Trinity's anger boiled over, but she forced herself not to lunge forward. Instead, she stormed to the girls' restroom and locked herself in a stall, pressing her fists against her forehead. Anger, humiliation, and a sense of betrayal tore at her insides. She remembered Aunt Gwen's words about escalation, about how the bullies would push back. But she hadn't expected them to twist her own film clips to undermine her credibility. Once the last bell rang, Trinity hurried home. Patrice's eyes widened as Trinity revealed the phony video. "I'm calling Martinez," her mother said, grabbing her phone. "This is defamatory." Trinity placed a hand on her mother's arm. "He'll just say he's investigating. We need Aunt Gwen. Or maybe Tamara from the NAACP. We can't fight them alone." Patrice's anger simmered. "We shouldn't have to do this, but you're right." She dialed Gwen, explaining the situation in clipped, furious tones. Within an hour, Gwen showed up at the house, her expression grim. "This changes the game," she said, scanning the video on her phone. "This is a deliberate smear campaign. We'll pursue defamation if we must." Trinity swallowed hard. "Then let's do it. Because I can't keep coming to school seeing people believe these lies." Gwen put a comforting hand on Trinity's shoulder. "We'll handle it, but brace yourself. This is about to get bigger than just the school. Once we involve lawyers, it's public domain." Despite her swirling fears, Trinity felt an unexpected surge of resolution. She would not let them destroy her dreams, her reputation, or her sense of self. "If the school can't protect me," she thought, "then I'll protect myself by exposing every ounce of this cruelty, even if it means lighting a fire I can't fully control." The next day, an uneasy hush fell over the hallways of Malcolm X High. Students eyed Trinity as though she were radioactive, some with pity, others with suspicion. Even a few teachers approached her with awkward attempts at comfort, quietly acknowledging that they'd seen the video, but never quite offering tangible help. Brianna's clique was conspicuously absent that morning, leaving Trinity on edge. She half expected them to leap out with some new scheme. But the day began in a curious lull. Around lunchtime, however, the tension snapped. Principal Martinez's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Trinity Johnson, please report to the main office immediately." Heart pounding, Trinity gathered her books and trudged through staring classmates until she reached the office. She found Brianna sitting there, eyes narrowed alongside her father, Mr. Reynolds, a tall man with a commanding presence and an air of impatience. Principal Martinez gestured for Trinity to take the seat opposite them. Trinity Martinez began cautiously. "Mr. Reynolds wants to discuss the allegations against his daughter." Trinity's gaze flicked between Brianna and her father. Allegations, she echoed, bitterness tinging her voice. "You've seen the vandalism. You've heard the recorded insults." Brianna's father cleared his throat. "My daughter is no saint, but she claims you've been making false accusations. And let's not forget, the video circulating seems like you've got your own issues." Trinity's cheeks burned. "The video is doctored. She made it from my film clips. It's meant to discredit me." A muscle twitched in Mr. Reynolds's jaw. "I won't deny teenagers get into petty dramas. However, going straight to outside organizations to the NAACP before letting the school handle it is extreme. You've escalated this situation unnecessarily." Trinity stared at him, incredulous. "I tried letting the school handle it, and nothing changed." Principal Martinez tried to step in his tone, overly diplomatic. "Let's calm down. We're all working to find a resolution. Mr. Reynolds, you must understand, Trinity alleges repeated harassment, much of it racially charged. We have a strict zero-tolerance policy for that." Brianna folded her arms, rolling her eyes. "I never used any slurs." "She's lying." Trinity's hands clenched. "Check my phone recordings. Look at the photos of the locker. All the hateful words scrawled there." Were those fake, too? Mr. Reynolds leaned forward, glaring at Martinez. "I hope you have real proof, because if this investigation smears my daughter's reputation, I'll be exploring my legal options against the school and any outside parties who spread baseless accusations." A crackle of tension charged the air. Principal Martinez cleared his throat, beads of sweat glistening on his temple. "I haven't concluded the investigation yet. Let's remain patient." Trinity's frustration surged. She knew that remain patient effectively meant giving Brianna and her father time to maneuver behind the scenes. She noticed how Martinez seemed intimidated, carefully choosing words that wouldn't offend the school board member's powerful father. Seeing no immediate resolution, Trinity left the office, her eyes stinging with unshed tears of rage. She could almost feel Brianna smirking behind her. Once outside, she found Aunt Gwen in the hallway, apparently having rushed to the school after hearing about the summons. "Are you all right?" Gwen asked, scanning Trinity's expression. "I'm so tired," Trinity admitted, voice trembling. "They're twisting everything. Brianna's father is threatening a counter-lawsuit or something." Gwen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Let him threaten. The law is still the law. We have evidence of harassment. We can push back with our own lawsuit if needed." Trinity's shoulders shook. "I can't keep living like this, looking over my shoulder every second. They're relentless." Gwen's gaze was resolute. "This is exactly why we mustn't cave. The NAACP has dealt with far bigger fish. You're not alone, Trinity. We'll do whatever it takes to end this." That evening, Trinity and Patrice met Gwen and Tamara, an NAACP lawyer, at a small coffee shop. Tamara was calm, radiating the confidence of someone who had navigated countless legal storms. She took notes on every detail. "The school is on notice," she said. "Now we bring this to the school district's Office of Equity and Inclusion. If that doesn't work, we file a formal complaint at the state level. We can also approach the local press if we suspect any cover-up." Though Trinity's anxiety gnawed at her, she felt gratitude for this newfound support. Together they drafted a thorough summary of each incident, complete with dates, times, and digital backups. By the end of the meeting, the plan was clear: call the district, show them the evidence, and demand action. If they refused, they'd face public scrutiny. As Trinity returned home, clutching printed copies of the evidence, she understood the fight was entering a more serious phase. Brianna's father was pulling strings, but the NAACP had decades of activism fueling its determination. The question was, would the district side with justice or with a powerful family? One thing was sure: there was no turning back. Trinity would make that call, put every shred of proof on the table, and force the system to confront its own negligence, even if it meant lighting a fire that would upend her entire world. The call to the school district's Office of Equity and Inclusion happened early the next morning. Tamara dialed on speakerphone, while Trinity, Patrice, and Aunt Gwen sat around the kitchen table, anxiously listening. A polite voice answered, and Tamara introduced herself as an attorney representing Trinity Johnson, a student at Malcolm X High. "We have documented instances of racial harassment that have not been adequately addressed by the school," Tamara explained. "We request an immediate investigation by the district." A muffled shuffling of papers sounded through the phone. The district representative asked for clarifications, each question answered by Tamara's calm, methodical tone. After 20 minutes, the representative confirmed they would commence a formal review. She asked for electronic copies of the evidence, which Tamara promptly emailed. Once the call ended, Aunt Gwen exhaled. "We're in the system now. That's step one." Trinity tried to quell the knot in her stomach. What if Mr. Reynolds tries to stop them? Tamara shook her head. "He can't. If the Office of Equity and Inclusion fails to act, they risk legal consequences. We keep every email, every document, and hold them accountable." That day at school, Trinity noticed a seismic shift. Principal Martinez had apparently been informed. He introduced a new anti-bullying measure in morning announcements and held a brief assembly reminding students of zero-tolerance policies. He didn't mention Trinity by name, but half the school understood the subtext. Brianna Marisol and Daisy reacted in different ways. Daisy avoided Trinity entirely, no snide remark or mocking smile. Marisol watched from a distance, uneasy. Brianna, however, doubled down. In a crowded hallway after lunch, she confronted Trinity at her locker, voice dripping with contempt. "You think your fancy lawyers can scare me? I can't believe how desperate you are." Trinity steadied her trembling hands, mindful that conflict could undermine her claims. "I'm just done being your punching bag," she replied, forcing her voice to remain even. "Keep talking. All it does is give me more evidence." Brianna's eyes flashed. "You've got a big mouth for someone who relies on outside help. What you can't handle your problems alone." Trinity wanted to lash out, but she recalled Aunt Gwen's advice. "Stay calm. Keep documenting." She tapped her phone, which was discreetly recording audio. "Say whatever you want," she said softly. "But you won't get away with it." Brianna scoffed. "You'll learn your place." She stormed off, leaving Trinity's nerves frayed, yet a small sense of triumph flickered within her. She'd kept her cool, kept collecting proof. The more Brianna talked, the more she incriminated herself. 2 days later, a letter arrived from the district instructing the school to cooperate with an external investigative team. The news spread like wildfire. Students whispered in the cafeteria about how some big case was going down, dividing opinions. Some cheered Trinity's courage. Others thought she was blowing things out of proportion. A few openly sided with Brianna, mocking Trinity for snitching. Then the local CBS affiliate reached out, apparently tipped off by someone at the district or the NAACP. They wanted an on-camera interview to discuss allegations of racial bullying at Malcolm X High. Patrice was hesitant, fearing backlash would intensify. Trinity, though terrified, felt a spark of resolve. She remembered how the bullies had weaponized social media, turning her video clips against her. Now she had a chance to show the truth unfiltered. That afternoon, a young reporter, Kelly Navarro, arrived with a small camera crew. They set up in the living room. Patrice hovered protectively, while Aunt Gwen coached Trinity on how to present her story. Once the camera rolled, Kelly asked gentle but probing questions. "How long have you experienced this harassment? Why do you believe it's racially motivated? Do you think the school administration supported you adequately?" Though her voice quavered. Trinity answered honestly, recounting the torn photographs, the hateful words scrawled on her locker, the manipulated video. She emphasized the repeated negligence she'd encountered. Kelly listened intently, nodding at the more egregious details. The interview ended with the reporter promising to air the segment the following evening. As the crew packed up, Gwen touched Trinity's shoulder. "You did great, baby girl. You spoke the truth." Trinity's pulse still throbbed in her ears. "I just hope it makes a difference." The next day, the interview aired on the 6 o'clock news. Classmates bombarded Trinity's phone with messages ranging from supportive to scathing. She braced herself, uncertain what Monday morning at Malcolm X High would bring. Yet beneath the anxiety and swirl of conflicting opinions, she felt a fierce pride. She'd refused to be silenced. The fuse was lit. The only question was, how big would this explosion be? Monday dawned under a slate-grey sky, and Trinity steeled herself for whatever lay ahead. Stepping into the building, she immediately sensed the atmosphere had changed. Students clustered in small knots, whispering in hushed tones as she passed. A few shot her supportive nods, while others looked at her as though she'd betrayed some unwritten code. She nearly made it to her locker unscathed. Then she spotted Brianna leaning against the metal door, scrolling through her phone with a tight-lipped smirk. "Famous now, huh?" Brianna remarked, loud enough for the surrounding students to hear. "Saw your sob story on TV. You sure you got all your tears in?" Trinity inhaled slowly, setting her backpack on the ground. "Move," she said, her voice low but steady. Brianna didn't budge. "What's your end game, Trinity? You want me expelled? You want the school to bend over backward because you cried racism?" Trinity could see a small crowd gathering phones, out ready to film if a fight broke out. Her heart hammered. She spotted a vice principal at the end of the hallway, but he pretended not to notice, perhaps wary of interfering in a high-profile scenario. "I just want the harassment to stop," Trinity said, forcing herself to stay calm. "But if you push me, I won't back down." An ugly laugh escaped Brianna's lips. "So tough behind your lawyers. You're pathetic." Yet, despite her bravado, Trinity noticed a flicker of uncertainty in Brianna's eyes, the presence of watchers. The district's looming investigation, these factors pinned Brianna in the spotlight too. One of Brianna's old friends, Jordan, suddenly spoke up from the crowd, surprising everyone. "Leave her alone, Brianna. We all saw what you did. It's messed up." Brianna's face contorted in anger. "Shut up, Jordan. You don't know anything." She shoved him aside and stalked away, the audience parting to let her through. The moment ended as quickly as it began, but the shift was palpable. Brianna no longer had absolute control of the narrative. In the afternoon, Trinity was called to the guidance counselor's office to meet with 2 district investigators. They asked her detailed questions, not just about Brianna, but also about how the school responded to her complaints. She handed over her phone to let them copy the text messages, the photos, and the audio recordings. They promised confidentiality, but Trinity knew rumors would spread anyway. As she left the office, she spotted Brianna being ushered in by a grim-faced Mr. Reynolds. The father's gaze met Trinity's for a split second, cold, calculating. A shiver of dread ran down her spine. She knew that look meant he'd stop at nothing to defend his daughter's reputation, even if it meant painting Trinity as a liar. The next few days felt like walking on a tightrope. The media coverage intensified, with local blogs picking up the story. Some parents demanded immediate disciplinary action against Brianna, while others decried the overreaction and claimed the matter should stay within the school. Trinity found herself inundated with messages, some praising her bravery, others accusing her of tarnishing the school's name. Even the teachers seemed rattled. Lessons carried a tension that hadn't been there before, as though everyone was waiting for the next bombshell. Trinity tried to keep her head down, but she couldn't ignore the swirl of gossip. The one solace came from Tasha Romello and a few others who rallied around her, making sure she wasn't alone in the cafeteria or the hallways. One morning, Trinity overheard a heated argument between 2 teachers in the staff lounge. They didn't notice her passing by. One was saying, "This can't go unpunished. We have to protect her." The other retorted, "We can't just single out a board member's kid without airtight proof." The friction within the faculty mirrored the larger conflict, justice versus politics. By the end of the week, the district investigators finished their initial interviews. Trinity was called back to the office and informed they'd be compiling a report with recommendations for disciplinary measures and potential policy changes. Principal Martinez, clearly stressed, tried to project calm, but failed to mask his panic. The entire school was under the microscope, and if the district found it had breached anti-discrimination protocols, serious consequences would follow. That Friday afternoon, as Trinity stepped outside into a gusty wind, she realized the path to justice was even thornier than she'd feared. Yet she also recognized something vital the tide was turning. People within Malcolm X High were speaking up, some timidly, others fiercely. The bully's grip on the narrative had started to slip. She clutched her backpack straps and walked into the wind, prepared to see this through to its conclusion. On a crisp Monday morning, 2 weeks later, The district's report arrived at Malcolm X High. Whispers circulated among students and staff. The office had received a detailed set of findings on the bullying allegations, citing evidence that ranged from Trinity's videos to eyewitness testimonials. The tension was thick enough to taste. Midway through first period, an announcement crackled over the loudspeaker. "All students, please excuse a brief interruption. Brianna Reynolds, Marisol Diaz, and Daisy Nguyen report to Principal Martinez's office immediately." A ripple of excitement and dread moved through the class. Trinity kept her face neutral, but inside her emotions churned. This could be the moment of accountability or a slap on the wrist. By lunchtime, the rumor mill was in full swing. Some claimed the trio was suspended. Others speculated it was just detention. Then the official emails went out to parents and staff, stating that students found to have engaged in racially motivated harassment would face disciplinary measures, including possible expulsion. Trinity's heart fluttered. Were they finally taking a stand? After school, Aunt Gwen and Patrice met Trinity at the school's front steps. The look in Gwen's eyes confirmed the news. "It's official," she said, her voice tinged with both relief and gravity. "Brianna is facing expulsion. Marisol and Daisy are getting long-term suspensions. The district recommended immediate disciplinary action." Trinity's breath caught in her throat. "So, that's it. They're gone." "Brianna's father is protesting," Gwen replied, scanning the street as if expecting him to appear. "But the evidence is overwhelming. The district also found the school failed to respond adequately. Principal Martinez is under review. There might be staff reassignments." A swirl of relief, sadness, and exhaustion consumed Trinity. She felt vindicated, yet drained. She couldn't forget the months of torment, the nights spent crying the hit to her self-esteem. Victory tasted bittersweet. The following morning, Trinity walked into Malcolm X High and felt a wave of curious stares, not all of them negative. Some students congratulated her in hushed tones, others avoided eye contact. Meanwhile, an emergency staff meeting announced new trainings on racial sensitivity and bullying prevention. The administration would implement clearer reporting protocols. The halls buzzed with talk that the school board was scrutinizing Mr. Reynolds for pressuring Martinez to dismiss earlier complaints. In a surprising twist, Jordan, the classmate, who had once been part of Brianna's social circle, approached Trinity at her locker. "Hey," he said, voice subdued. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared, I guess." Trinity studied his remorseful expression, uncertain if she should offer forgiveness. Eventually she nodded. "Thank you for speaking up when you did. I appreciate it." He shuffled his feet. "I'm glad you're okay." Then he walked off, leaving Trinity with a mix of relief and lingering resentment. She realized that many had witnessed her suffering, but did nothing until it was safe for them to do so. As the day wore on, the tension began to ease. Without Brianna and her crew prowling the corridors, a heavy weight lifted from the atmosphere. When the final bell rang, Trinity retrieved her books, her mind drifting to everything that had transpired. She pictured the defaced locker, the manipulated videos, the hateful text messages. And then she thought of the call to the NAACP, the district's investigation, and the unwavering support of Aunt Gwen, Patrice, and Tamara. On her way out, she passed by Principal Martinez's office. He stood in the hallway looking worn. Their eyes met, and he offered a thin smile of apology. Trinity nodded politely, but didn't stop. She suspected the school's changes were more about avoiding lawsuits than genuine moral conviction. Still, it was something, a structural shift that might prevent future students from suffering like she did. Outside, the afternoon sun glimmered over the worn brick walls, hinting at renewal. Trinity felt a rush of emotion wash over her pain triumph and a strange sense of responsibility. In her mind, she heard Aunt Gwen's voice. Courage is contagious. Maybe her stand would embolden someone else somewhere down the line to fight back sooner. That evening, she gathered with her mother and aunt for a simple celebration at home. Take-out Chinese food, shared laughter, and a quiet sense that a new chapter had begun. No confetti, no grand speeches, just relief that the battle was finally tilting toward justice. The journey had taken a toll on her heart, but it also forged an iron spine of resilience. Later, alone in her room, Trinity reflected on the phone call that changed everything the moment she reached out for help. It wasn't a single call, really, but a chain of calls and decisions that forced accountability. She realized that while the struggle had been grueling, she'd proven to herself that she could push back against injustice and reclaim her narrative. She fell asleep with the faintest smile on her lips, aware that scars remained, but hope had blossomed in their place. Tomorrow, she would walk into Malcolm X High with her head held high, free from the bullies' reach, and carrying the knowledge that her voice, once dismissed, now had the power to change the course of others' lives as well as her own. Standing on the other side of fear, Trinity discovered that bullies only thrive in silence, and the moment one voice exposes them, their power collapses. She refused to accept the status quo of whispered threats and covert cruelty. Her evidence, her allies, and her unwavering courage became the antidote to a system too slow to protect the vulnerable. If this story resonates, share it. Post it on social media, text it to friends, and let it ignite hope in someone who feels unheard. Then subscribe here so you won't miss future tales that confront injustice and celebrate resilience. Each of us has a role to play in shining light into dark corners. Let's become a community where no one stands alone against prejudice and where a single determined voice can spark a transformative call to action. Together, we can make that one call one that changes everything.